The major takeaway that we have from this, or the things that we know for certain, are: one, General Motors is still working on some sort of cylinder deactivation for now and in the future, so it's not going away.
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wrenches in my top drawer of my Snap-on box. This is an article from GM Authority. Link will be in the description. GM is working on a new V8 cylinder deactivation system. Dane, this is crazy. This is an article. They found a patent application for a variable displacement valve train system. Now, I have to be honest, they are describing this system in this article, and find it a little bit hard to follow. I would need to see the system with everything labeled and it working properly, and they're just kind of describing it.
Yeah, well, if you could scroll up to maybe that top photo, maybe I can try and break it down a little bit, at least to kind of help guys that are, a little new to the game. The current system for cylinder deactivation is all involved with the lifters. And the lifters are numbers 150 and 152 on this diagram. The camshaft.
Yeah. See 150, 152.
Yeah, if you scroll up just a tiny little bit, the 146, where that's pointing at, that's the tip of the lobe on the camshaft. That tip of that lobe is what's pushing those lifters up and down. So as that spins, I like that view better. So as that camshaft spins, it's pushing the lifter up and down on each one. Every cylinder has got their own, right?
Right.
So oil is redirected through that lifter, and it either collapses it or extends it to its full length to make the push rod then move, and then the rocker arm up there, number 140, kind of rotate, push the valve open, and allowing air into the cylinder or exhaust out, whatever have you. So right now, like I said, GM is using 150, 152, those lifters, to basically make the actuation to shut the cylinders off, kind of keep the valves closed, so that way they're not running on those certain cylinders. Well, that has caused lots of issues.
We
from
know.
oil starvation in certain places to those lifters collapsing, causing other metal to go through the engine. There's just been a host of issues. Sometimes the bearings lock up, and that causes the cam lobe to wipe out. There's been problems in the past. And so now they're looking at putting basically an oil-operated system inside of the rocker arm itself. Now, the rocker arm would be number 138 and 140 as you look here. And so that rocker arm changes motion from the push rod pushing up, lifter to push rod, and then that rocks on that valve or on the rocker arm, and then the rocker arm pushes the valve open.
Right.
So they're going to basically create a spool valve inside of their hydraulic rocker arm. Usually they're just solid metal, right, with like a bronze bushing or a needle bearing inside of that rocker.
Yeah.
They're going to have probably still a bearing of some kind, but then there's going to be oil in there with a valve. And that
so you think the rocker arm is going to be off and on instead of the lifter?
That's what they're about doing here. Yeah, exactly. They're going to be turning the rocker arm off and on, not the lifter anymore. So lifters will be solid, or they'll be hydraulic lifters, so they got a little bit of squish. But the rocker arms themselves is what's going to have the mechanism inside of it. And so
what is this thing, Dane?
I'm not sure. Scroll down. Where is it? There you go. The system describes a GM patent is intended for use in engines with rocker arms and push rods as overhead valve. Engine assemblies relies on controlled hydraulic pressure to disengage valve. Actuation certain cylinders possible at these systems implement a new Gen 6 small block. All right, go down a little bit further. It talks about running a spool valve in there. Let's see. The center of the system is a rocker shaft that mounts to the engine assembly and contains an internal bore for the hydraulic fluid. So
what is this rocker? Where is this rocker shaft at?
That goes through the center of the rocker arm itself.
So that's inside of the rocker arm?
Yeah. So the rocker arm is, you think of it as a pivot, right? So it just kind of pivots, and it pivots on a shaft.
Yeah.
And that's what that bearing is, or that bronze bushing is. That's what allows the rocker to pivot inside of it. So that shaft will be filled with oil, and it'll be able to divert how fluid moves through it to either engage or disengage the rocker arm itself. That's kind of what they're getting at. So anyways,
this is going to be in the head.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe that'll be easier to fix anyway.
That's kind of, I believe what the hope is. What they're trying to do there anyways is.
Oh, so that's what this picture is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be like a hydraulic assembly in between the lifter and the push rod.
They talked about, they mentioned something there too about the push rod sleeve So I'm guessing it all works together. Let's
All right,
see.
I don't think we know for sure how this works.
They work right. It's kind of vague in this statement,
It's
but
hard to
the way
figure
I
out,
read
but
that. So go back down a little bit.
I don't know.
Let's see. Yeah, go on. Keep going down. Let's see. It says that rock arms included spring-like unit attached push rod at the end of the rocker arm. Yep. Go scrolling a little bit further. During normal operation, the rocker arm activates the push rod valve, allowing the valve to open and close. When cylinder deactivation is needed, pressurized hydraulic fluid is routed through the rocker arm shaft. Yep, and into insert sleeve mounted within the internal bore. Yep, the inserted sleeve includes a feed port that directs hydraulic fluid to the OCV, as well as feed pockets that transmits fluid from the OCV to the spring lock unit within the rocker arm. Right. So that hydraulic fluid that's going to be going through the rocker shaft, we'll want to keep it lubricated because there's, like I said, a bearing or bronze bushing there or whatever that helps keep that rocker pivoting and moving and operating smoothly. But it's
Yeah.
also going to have a valve inside of it too that will redirect flow, and that will either engage or disengage that rocker arm for that cylinder.
Okay.
That's how I'm reading it.
All right. Well, yeah, I think you might be right. But we'll see. My point for this is a patent application, so we don't know for sure if that's how they're going to do it. Sometimes OEMs will file patents, even though they don't intend on using them because maybe they discovered something in their research and they don't want other people to use it because things do leak out.
Yeah.
So yeah, they may or may not be using this. I think they probably will use this. And here's a couple points I had about this new system. Number one, I understand that most people don't want this system. However, we have to understand that GM started designing this back when they had all these high fuel economy standards. Okay. So this takes years and years to design the system. Just recently, they lifted a lot of these fuel standards. So you might think, well, just throw it away. But the thing is, some people do want more fuel economy. These engines aren't just going in the Silverado, they're going in the Escalade, they're going in the Tahoe, they're going in every giant SUV that GM sells. And some people want fuel economy. And, some people, especially people with businesses or fleets, some people want it. I'm hoping that there'll be an easy way to disable it. But there's a couple other things I wanted to mention. Okay. Number two, we don't know if this is going to work out great or not. Maybe it'll have problems like the AFM, DFM system. Maybe it won't. We don't know for sure. It's a new system. We got to give it a chance to work. I'm hoping that it'll work out just fine and dandy. I'm hoping it'll be kind of like a hydraulic control unit for ABS to where it's part of the system, but it doesn't interfere too much so that the ABS hydraulic control unit doesn't go bad that much.
Mhm.
It's kind of part of it, but it's not really intruding too much. So
Mhm.
hopefully it'll be like that. Dane, what do you think?
Yeah, the major takeaway that we have from this, or the things that we know for certain, are one, General Motors is still working on some sort of cylinder deactivation for now and in the future. So it's not going away. That's what we do know for sure.
Right.
I think a lot of us want it to go away. I
Yeah.
don't think we need it. Most people that want it, that have it, don't want it.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they're still working on it, and it's probably because, kind of like you mentioned, like the administration now says, you don't need it, where the administration before said you did. So they're probably always working towards we don't know what the future is, so we're going to keep developing it, and we're going to keep putting it in vehicles because we don't know what the next
Yeah, we
administration
don't
may or
know. I
may not
mean,
do.
maybe Kamala Harris will get elected and then they'll bring all the regulations back. It'll
Yeah,
be a
right.
nightmare, but
Yeah, right. You just never know. So
you never know.
yeah, you got to remember these CEOs and the engineers and project managers, they're thinking years, decades sometimes into the future on what they're making for product. You
Yeah.
can't make product for today, you're too late. You need to make product for 7, 8 years from now, and you don't know what the future is going to be. So you got to remember that too when you're talking about why did GM do it a certain way. Well, when that 2026 vehicle comes out, that thing wasn't made this year. They started
Yes.
making that thing 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah, it
And
was
then
at
it finally
least
gets
7 or 8 years
released.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
remember that's a 10-year-old vehicle to the people inside those walls. It's new to you. That was kind of the
exactly.
neat thing about being, when we used to work for Cummins, right? And we were on the research development side of things. we always were working on what's new. So when we met guys that had current model stuff, that had questions, we're like, dude, we're already on to the stuff in the future, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems so old back then. They'd be
Yeah,
like,
right.
they'd be talking to you about stuff and like, dude, the guys that designed that, they're not even at the company anymore.
They're retired. They've already moved on.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that stuff would be like 5 years old, to
Yeah.
them, to us, we were always, 5-7 years in the future compared to most people. So
Yeah,
a
that's
lot
so
of people
let's
don't realize that. So you got to remember they're building cars of today with 10-year-old technology from back then.
yeah, so we're gonna hope that it works out. Let's take a look in the comment section to see what the people think. Let us know in the comment section on our page. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah.
Let's see. This guy says, excellent. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Damn it.
124 upvotes to 10 downvotes.
Yep.
This guy says, I think I speak for the village when I say, no, God, please, no, no. I think he's doing it from the office.
I think so too.
This guy, let's see, that's too long. This guy says, oil consumption, no pressure to seat the rings, power loss, as you need to reduce valve size to accommodate a third valve. Oh yeah, this guy commented, why not just shut off the injectors to the cylinders? And he's saying, that's not going to quite work. This guy says, looks like substantial increases in rocker arm mass and compliance at the push rod end, both of which will contribute to a significant reduction in valve train RPM capability. Might be okay for low speed torquier engine. Oh
yeah, dude, that's a yeah.
What do you think, Dane?
He's so he knows enough to like kind of get himself in trouble with this comment.
Yeah.
The stock springs, like in current rocker arms, are incredibly light. And the weight or the amount of spring pressure on that valve seat is what limits how much RPM they can go. The camshaft also will stop making power before the valves start to float. So adding more mass on a light spring will, again, bring that RPM lower, valves will float. But you think General Motors doesn't know that? You think they don't just add a little bit more seat pressure on the valve spring?
Yeah.
These things are only revving out to like 6,500 RPM max. That's not crazy. So a little more seat pressure. Springs are available from all over the world. It's not a big deal.
All right.
yeah, it's a non-issue.
Okay. This guy says, how about they don't and say they did? 98.6 upvotes, 6 down.
I like that one, yeah.
This guy says, I can't wait to be the first to buy one. Laughing emoji.
Yeah, a little sarcasm there.
This guy says, sounds like another unreliable shot at cylinder deactivation. If GM would like to maintain some sort of market share, they need to stop doing dumb things that will cost customers money outside of warranty that GM will not assume responsibility for. Give me the reliable LS port injected V8 with a normal valve train that GM needs to pay the fuel economy penalty, not the customer with a bunch of unreliable BS. All right. First of all, we don't know if it's going to be reliable or unreliable. We have to see how it works. Let's see. Let's give it a chance. And he says if they want to maintain some type of market share, okay. To maintain market
majority
share,
of it.
Yeah, I mean, they already are killing the market share, but they do need to worry about some fuel economy standards. We can't have people have any excuse to buy a Ford or even a Tundra if they have better fuel economy. We need to at least be able to keep pace with the other people on fuel economy, and they have some V6s on there. So we got to do something. I'd rather them go with a hybrid system, but they might be coming out with a hybrid system too. So we will find out. Going back to port injected, that is just not going to happen, bro. I don't know what planet you're living on. I mean, it's more reliable and it's older school technology, but you lose so many miles per gallon going backwards. Like, I'd like to go backwards too, but I mean, time only goes in one direction at this point.
And performance, the new direct injected motors make so much more power and they're more fuel efficient.
Yeah. So we everything's a balancing act. And then he says, cost the customers money outside of warranty. And no OEM assumes responsibility outside of warranty, like unless it's like a special situation where they're trying to give you a break. But yeah, the warranty is there for every OEM. So, at least look at it like this. At least this V8 will be easier to work on outside of warranty as compared to the Tundra twin turbo V6. That thing's gonna be a nightmare outside of warranty.
Mhm.
And the EcoBoosts are more difficult. They got all these turbo systems. At least we don't have turbos to worry about outside of warranty. I don't know, Dane. I'm gonna give you the last word on this. What do you think? What are your honest opinion before we get out of this article?
Again, coming since we have the research engineering background, I understand people's concerns. Like, I can't believe they would just make something that's going to fail and cost customers money. They that they probably never saw these failures in testing, and it's not because they didn't do enough of it. Yeah, like I said, these things were tested for years, tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours across multiple engines. But their testing that they're doing is very rapid. They're putting a lot of miles on in a short period of time. They're doing oil changes at regular intervals. They're not always seeing the dirt, the grime, the lack of maintenance, maybe some of the other oil debris and impurities that can cause issues. They're not always seeing that kind of stuff. An example that I could think of, when we were at Cummins, is like that 6.7 before it was released, was the durability testing on that thing was incredible. It would
Yeah.
be in negative 60 below in a test cell, fire it up straight to wide open, full torque within seconds. Make it live, right? Where the oil doesn't really have enough lubrication or lubricity properties to not tear up bearings. They'd go to Death Valley and they'd pull huge loads up and down hills, torch test these things in the heat. We'd put fuel and oil to dilute it to, again, decrease lubricity to make sure these things could live. They'd put them on dynos, make them run 100% horsepower with full load torque for like a month, 2 months straight, sometimes without ever shutting off, no oil changes. Crazy abuse. And
Right.
you know what their biggest failure was? And it was
People
the
not
turbo
using 'em.
sitting up, because most people weren't beating them up like that. They were just idling them to the grocery store and back. They weren't building enough heat to keep the turbos clean. So it's
Yep.
like you try and do everything you can from a research or in development testing standpoint, and sometimes you just can't account for everything. Some
Yeah.
things are going to
So
happen outside of your control. So when these things happen, it's not like they knew, but now that they know, they're trying to come up with a fix.
and not every AFM DFM engine had lifter issues either. I mean, some of them did, some of them didn't. And the ones that did, we can't 100% be sure that those vehicles were taken care of. And sometimes you even will go to get an oil change. You go to some of these quick lube places and they don't even change the oil, or they change the oil with a different weight than they're supposed to, or they don't change the oil filter. You do that a couple times and you are in trouble. And like I said, I mean, outside of warranty, I mean, you look, things break sometime. What are we going to do? But we're going to keep driving. And I still think we have the best V8 in the game. And thank God for Miss Mary, because we have new V8s coming. We ain't got no twin turbo supercharged tiny little V6. We got a real V8 coming. I think it's
V8's
going to be
forever.
all right.
V8's forever, man. America.
V8s forever.